Hi, my name is David Yoon, and my tech talk is on Firebase. So what is Firebase? Well, there's a lot of things about Firebase that I still feel confused about. There's so many things going on, and they're adding so many different features every year. So let me go over briefly what it actually is. Firebase is a fully featured app development platform for iOS and Android and the web. It makes it very easy to make and deploy app without setting up your own complex infrastructure. Traditionally, we go through these phases when setting up traditional app development. We first write a front-end client that makes a RESTful request to the server, and then we write another application in the server that says using framework like Express to query the database, and we'll wait for the database to be returned back, and then we'll process that information and then send it back to the client. Now, with Firebase app development, we're actually using Firebase SDK on the front end, and we're actually using Firebase SDK as a server. It's held in the front end, and Firebase is basically just acting as a real-time database and storage and for authentication. Now, the core components that you can use and basically to run an app are three things: are real-time database, authentication, cloud storage. And what real-time database is, Firebase uses a JSON database. It is a non-SQL database, non-relational database. And so therefore, there are some things that are different than what people are usually normally used to using a relational database. And there are some things that becomes a hurdle. With authentication, Firebase incorporates this into the feature where it makes OAuth. You can sign in with email, password, and you even use phone number validation. And you can even use your pre-existing authorization that you have already. And these are all built on top of Google securities that they have already established and trust. You also have cloud storage that you can access from the real-time database to retrieve and send information like user-created data, like videos, audio, and other user-created data. Now, this is a sample of what a Firebase JSON database looks like. Typically, as you know, in an object in JavaScript, this is how most things are represented. And how the real-time database works is that it stores and syncs multiple devices at the same time. Firebase stores the data to the clouds, and from there it is shared to multiple clients in real time. And because it is real time, it is not separated database. This is done in milliseconds, which makes things synchronized really very quickly. So, what about the serverless app? Most of the business logic of the server is handled on the front end using Firebase SDK. And you might wonder, if you have a lot of information on the front side, there might be a security issue. And you don't want people with some form of knowledge of how to code to find out some things that you don't want them to know. And this is where Cloud Function comes in. Cloud Functions, basically, you can use to store the backend sensitive information and have it run it as a server. And you're actually taking the business logic from the front end and putting to the back end. And I would like to think Cloud Function as an action and reducer that we use in React, and the real-time database as a store, form of a store that you're retrieving information and pushing to. Now, if it's a real-time database, you're asking yourself, this has to be constantly connected, right? But the thing is, the way that Firebase handles data is that it serves and it stores the data in this local storage. And then whenever it's offline, it waits until it's reconnected and it pushes it into the clouds. And when it's pushed into the clouds, it is synchronized with every device that needs to be synchronized. So there are many, many different features in Firebase, and I will give a very brief descriptions of each one of these so you guys will know kind of what to work with and what's available on Firebase. I've already discussed what real-time database is. authentication, cloud storage, cloud functions. And with Firebase, you can actually develop app for multiple platforms, for like iOS and Android, and even for the web. So for Android in particular, they have places where they have multiple devices with running multiple Android versions. Then you can actually test your app to see if there's how it does actually before you actually deploy it. And then they have tools called crash reporting that gives you tools to let you know how your app crashed, what kind of environment that it crashed, and what caused the crash. They also have hosting services that let you serve persistent and static hosting, and they're cached on solid-state drives in multiple CDNs worldwide. So it makes them real fast. And they also provide free SSL certification. And they also provide tools to monitor the performance, how well your app is doing in the environment that it's running. And another category that really doesn't pertain to developing and testing is where you grow and engage your audience. Google Analytics is a great tool to let you know like how your app is doing, who's using it, where they're using it, and how often. The dynamic link I thought was pretty interesting is that it actually preserves the metadata from the link that you send to someone. Say you want to go to a particular page inside your app, not just opening your app, but a particular content of your app. The dynamic link will actually send you to that page, even if you have to download the app and you don't have it. So this is where invites come in. Invites is where people send referral codes, and I know there's a lot of people in this class that try to send MailPal referrals to get credits. And this would have made it very easy, because basically all they have to do is click on the link, and all the metadata of who sent the referral would actually transfer over, and it would autocomplete. It will make everything seamless. And AdMob is the tool that you use to put advertisement in your app to monetize on it. And cloud messaging, it allows you to send messages across your clients. Remote configuration, it actually lets you change variations of your app without actually redeploying your app. App indexing allows you to index your app on Google search engine so that it will be easier for people to find. AdWords will let you optimize how well your placement of your advertising is working and what kind of clients are brought back to you. Now, there are cons of Firebase, and these are only the few that I've discovered. There were people saying that because this is a non-relational database, do you have chances that it won't handle complex query and associations or indexing to the database. So that is a cost that you have to consider. There's no associations, and if your app is not really needing to sync across multiple platforms and needs to update, it really doesn't need Firebase, in my opinion. And it scales dynamically, but when you get too big, because of the way that the database is structured, it provides a lot of hurdles. And this is some of the companies that already use Firebase right now. And this is the credits that I got some of my information from. And thank you guys for your time.